Hi, I'm Josh Rushing, filling in for Lisa Fletcher, and you are in the stream. Today, out but not equal. After the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, gays in the United States military are more open, but do they have the same rights? Our digital producer, Malika Blau, is here looking out for your live feedback. Malika, it seems like our community has really strong opinions on this issue, huh?
That's definitely putting it mildly. Whenever we do LGBT issues on the show, us having such a diverse community, we get a lot of views from people weighing in on homosexuality itself. But today we got a Facebook comment from Ruben who argues it's not about orientation, it's about rights. He says, I don't understand the fuss. They can do the job. They put themselves in harm's way for their country. It should therefore not matter what their sexual preferences are. In fact, their sexual preferences shouldn't matter, period. Now, for those of you at home, we want to hear what you think, so join the conversation using the hashtag AJStream.
All right, joining us on set is Allison Robinson, the Executive Director of Outserved Service Members Legal Defense Network, a nonprofit organization established in the discrimination of gay and lesbian service members under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Welcome.
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here.
Sure. Now remember, you can be a part of the conversation in a number of ways. And if you want to use more than 140 characters, just write us using Facebook. Go to facebook.com/AJStream. Oh, and like us.
I'm Alana Feldman Solis. I'm General Coordinator at Taller Salud, and I'm in the stream.
Revoking Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or DADT, in 2011 was lauded as a great milestone, as it prevents the dismissal of U.S. troops from the military due to their sexual orientation. Although this has been permitted gays to serve more openly, it didn't necessarily afford their spouses the same benefits as their heterosexual counterparts. Now take a look at this video and how it's affected one military family.
Around the time of Don't Ask, Don't Tell being repealed, we started to question, would our relationship be recognized through a civil union? And the answer was no. On a federal level, it was not the same thing as marriage.
Oh, come on.
No.
All right, I'm gonna do it. I don't got no hair. Are you gonna do it? So that's when we woke up and said, oh my gosh. And at the time, I had the reoccurrence. So I'm starting to think ahead. Oh my gosh, this is what this means. This means that Karen wouldn't be eligible for anything.
Now, what she's dealing with there is in large part due to the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA as it's known. This 1996 legislation only allows the federal government and therefore the military to recognize marriages between a man and a woman, regardless of state law. The U.S. Supreme Court has scheduled to hear arguments on DOMA and its constitutionality for this March. Joining us today in a Google Plus Hangout from New Hampshire is Army National Guard Chief Warrant Officer Charlie Morgan and her wife, Karen, who you just saw in that video. They had a civil union in 2000, they were married in 2012, and they have a 5-year-old daughter. Charlie is currently battling breast cancer and in April was given 6 months to live. Also with us in the Hangout are Dan Lamott, a retired Navy aviation electronics technician, and his domestic partner Scott Pearson, who's the commander of the 133rd Army Band of the Washington National Guard. All right, welcome to the stream, everyone. You know, I used to be in the military. Everyone has really long descriptions of their jobs that you always have to get it all out. I want to begin here, though, with Charlie and Karen. Charlie, Karen, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Can you tell us, how big of an issue is this? How does this impact you in everyday life?
Well, it's impact in the sense that you worry about it. We're struggling with Karen's health care right now. She should be covered under TRICARE, and she had a temporary policy that's getting ready to expire, and we're looking at the prices, and it's like $400 or $500 a month that we've got to pay for her to have health insurance. So that just by itself is the health insurance part, not to mention the fact that she doesn't have an ID card, so she can't even take me on post if I needed to go, let alone Casey. So we're really trying to work around that, but it's difficult.
Well, we reached out to the U.S. Department of Defense and we asked what they were doing to help same-sex spouses and military personnel. Here's how they responded. The department is conducting a deliberative and comprehensive review of the possibility of extending eligibility for benefits when legally permitted to same-sex domestic partners. The benefits are being examined from a policy, fiscal, legal, and feasibility perspective. So, Allison, they dropped Don't Ask, Don't Tell almost a year and a half ago, and before dropping it, they had years of study leading up to that. I assume the question about how to treat the spouses once they dropped it must have come up in those years of study. So the DOD couldn't be surprised about this. They've had this for years. How can they say they're still studying it? What's taking them so long?
Well, that's a great question, Josh. It's a question that I'd love to have an answer to, much less families like Charlie and Karen's family. There has been, to call it reticence on the part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to address this issue is to significantly understate the case. We know at OutServe SLDN that as recently as the end of last October, they were presented with a comprehensive review and recommendations that would have made the situation significantly better for families like this. They chose not to. They didn't choose to delay. They chose not to act, and it's a gross failure of leadership. On
now, a lot of people say that the military can't do anything as long as DOMA is in place, because if the federal government can't recognize a spouse, then the military can't do anything. But that's not entirely true on all these benefits, is it?
No, that's absolutely correct. There are many benefits, some 25 or 26. That the Joint Chiefs could grant today. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff could do it today. The Secretary of Defense could do it today with the stroke of a pen. It would not completely make up for the inequities that gay and lesbian families face because of the Defense of Marriage Act, but it would make their lives significantly easier.
Well, we mentioned at the top of the show that our community is definitely diverse, and so we're hearing a lot of heated debate about this, about the issue of homosexuality in general. As we mentioned, Yahya says, what rights, when we should be talking about erasing them from our communities? Another tweet, Muhammad says, sorry, no rights for people who will have the wrath of God. But then, of course, we then see this countered by people like Neslihan, who says, if gay U.S. soldiers are doing an honorable duty, just like any other, their sexual preferences and personal choices seem irrelevant. And I want to direct this next one to Dan and Scott in our hangout. This tweet from Chris, he says, especially with the newest legislation, it seems like it's one step forward and two steps back. Is that what you would see, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but then, coming up against issues that arise from DOMA? One step forward, two steps back?
I wouldn't necessarily say two steps back. We're making progress. It's just taking more time than we would like.
Can you elaborate on that? What kind of progress? Because I know, Dan, you're not entitled to any of Scott's federal pension benefits. Is that right?
Correct. I wouldn't be entitled to that. I'm not entitled to commissary benefits, base exchange benefits. Some bases would allow me to get a base access card. As his FRG lead, I'm allowed to get the base access card. So
well,
go ahead,
I was going to bring it back to Allison. In the news recently, we're talking about the nomination of Chuck Hagel to replace Leon Panetta, Secretary of Defense. As I've watched the military through the years, it seems like some secretaries of defense were probably more open to this than others. I think Bob Gates was probably more open to it. What do you think about Hagel and how this his appointment, if it is approved, would affect this issue?
Well, it's a terrific question. I would say this first, though. Arguably, Leon Panetta, who is the current Secretary of Defense, is the most progressive person ever to have held the office. And these changes have lagged under his leadership. Senator Hagel is a very, very qualified person to run the Department of Defense. He's a former non-commissioned officer. He'd be the first ever to hold the office that came out of that context. He was a well-respected member of the Senate. He's made some public statements in the past about LGBT people, and his voting record on LGBT issues when he was in the Senate are frankly terrible.
Right.
And so there's a lot of pause within the community about whether he deserves the support of LGBT Americans for this role.
Has he changed though in the years? Like America has changed. Clinton signed in DOMA into law, right? And so it is a different America today than it was in the 90s when Hegel said some of those things.
Exactly.
I wonder if that pendulum, or that pendulum doesn't swing so far the other way, like he tries to correct the issue in some way, that he could be a real benefit to your community in the office.
Well, I would hope so. You're absolutely right. The senator has apologized. I think his apology was sincere and heartfelt for the remarks that he made. What we've been saying at Outserve SLDN is that actions speak louder than apologies. And as the confirmation process begins, we're going to be looking for a commitment to some specific actions on these issues from him.
Charlie, Karen, I want to ask you, this discrimination we're talking about is really policy today. So we're saying that if, let's say a young Marine, 18 years old, marries someone that he just met last week, they go to Vegas, they elope, that person gets a long list of rights and benefits simply because they're heterosexual, that you and your partner that you've been with for many, many years doesn't get. And so I really want to get into the heart of that, but I'm just curious on another level. Do you feel the discrimination from peers that you work with and members that you serve with in the military, or is the discrimination really more through the policies of the Pentagon, or is it both?
It's really the policies, and you're right. We've been together for 16 years. You know, it's a committed relationship. We're a family, and we love each other just like any other family. Family values are important to us. So, you know, we are a loving, committed family, and that's what matters the most. As far as the discrimination, I was invited to say the Pledge of Allegiance to our new governor, Governor Hassan's inauguration. She called me up and asked me to say the pledge because of our fight for equality. And when I did say the pledge, I looked up in the stands and saw my leadership in their dress blues. And what I didn't know earlier is that they had came up to Karen, and you can elaborate on that.
Well, they came up to our family and greeted us. There was myself, my daughter, and my mom were all there, and they, you know, they greeted us, and we felt welcome. And as far as any other discrimination, we haven't felt that from the local, Charlie's local leadership. In fact, we've gotten a lot of support. We've gotten help with household things here since she's been sick. They've checked on us, and we felt fully supported. So it's more of a policy issue for us.
Well, speaking about the policy and being sick, if the worst were to come to pass there, what happens for the benefits of a heterosexual spouse as opposed to the benefits of a same-sex partner, right, as the law stands now?
Well, the main difference is the Veterans Affairs and the Social Security. Life insurance, all military folks are eligible for the SLGI. You can nominate anybody for that beneficiary. That's not what we're talking about. My father died when I was 3 on active duty, and my mother and I both received the VA and Social Security stipend. It was quite a bit because it fed, it provided, you know, food and shelter for us. I think it's pretty much like almost $1,000 a month now. That's a monthly stipend that goes to your dependents and your spouse to help care for your dependents. That's what Karen would not get, that Marine who just got married in Vegas would get. I think they calculated close to almost a $300,000 benefit. Not to mention TRICARE for life.
Just so our audience understands, TRICARE, you're just talking about health care coverage for your wife, right?
Yes, health care, and that's significant. You know, this economy, those are the type of benefits that really matter to families. So, yes, it is the policy, the discriminatory policy.
And
are these the benefits that you were talking about that could be changed?
These are some of them. But, you know, what I would want to point out about these benefits is that these are earned benefits. Charlie has earned these benefits by virtue of the service that she has rendered to this country. For the leaders at the Pentagon to issue a statement, we're looking at this from a policy, a fiscal perspective. If they were an opposite sex couple, no one would be asking about cost or a fiscal perspective.
Well, not everyone agrees with you on that. Well, earlier today, we spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, and he's a senior fellow with the Family Research Council. It's a nonprofit organization seeking to advance faith, family, and freedom in public policy from a Christian perspective. He also helped draft, back in the 90s, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. We asked him if he thought the effort to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the current efforts against DOMA were part of a larger agenda.
Yeah, there's no question that there's a relationship between the effort to repeal the DOMA Act, the Defense of Marriage Act, and the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You know, back in '93, part of the task force, I looked at the culture, and I, provided people on the Hill, as well as the administration, with a cultural overview as to what the agenda of the gay and lesbian, bisexual community happened to be. You know, they weren't shy about saying that they wanted full recognition, moral equivalency to heterosexuality. They wanted marriage. They wanted, every right that was associated with heterosexual marriage in the United States. So yes, I think that they are moving in that direction. I do believe that the energy that repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell is behind the effort to repeal DOMA.
Well, on the back of that, we're talking about changing perceptions. Shuja Rabbani on Twitter says, I think more people in the U.S. are now looking at the same-sex issue from a humanist point of view, and he goes on to leave a video comment for us. Scott, I want you to have a listen to this and let me know what you think.
Rabbani from United Arab Emirates, and I wanted to make a quick comment on the subject of same-sex marriage in the United States. I believe that over the years it has become more of a topic of discussion on equality as opposed to what's right and what's wrong, and making it a religious or a political subject. And that, I believe, is one of the main reasons why people are a lot more tolerant towards the subject, and the U.S. is moving in favor of this topic.
So Scott, he says the U.S. is moving to talk of equality. How have attitudes among your fellow soldiers changed since you first joined in the 90s? Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I've been in for almost 19 years now, and in the time that I've been in service between the Marine Corps, the Air National Guard, and now the Army National Guard out here in Washington, I can honestly say that I've seen a paradigm shift on this and people's attitudes, because I think the more that people know, I guess, gay people just in general, and that they're in the same types of relationships that everyone else is, and the same commitments and the same, family issues and everything, I think that it helps them to understand that we're no different than anyone else. And, I came out pretty much to my unit before even Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And I've been with Dan for about 4.5 years now. And, my unit has completely embraced Dan as my partner. And when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was officially repealed, I was able to officially appoint him as my family readiness group lead. And he's been completely embraced by the higher command and the state family programs coordinator and everybody else within the state. And so I think that people's attitudes, really have changed considerably, because they know more people that are, in fact, gay. So,
Dan, what risk did you take by coming out to your unit before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was dropped?
Oh, I'm sure I could have been fired.
And kicked out of the military?
Yes.
Huh. And Scott?
But I guess I was at a point where I was just kind of tired of hiding, and I was getting great evaluations by my superiors and everything, and so I just decided that I was going to go ahead and just take it out for a walk. I mean, I didn't exactly, come out blazing or anything like that, but I didn't, it was no longer a secret, and most everyone had already known anyway. I mean, anyone that I told, they're like, we've known that for years.
Scott, just our audience may not know what a family readiness group is. Can you tell us really quickly what that is? I think you were the first same-sex partner to be the head of a family readiness group. And how were you accepted by the other spouses?
Yes, I was. And the family readiness group acts as a liaison between the military unit and the families of the soldiers. We pass on information. We keep them involved. If the unit was to deploy, we would keep them abreast of what's going on, make sure they're doing okay. We help them in any way we can to make it easier for them.
So how did the other spouses accept you into that group?
Love me. It's been phenomenal. There has been no problem. It's spouses supporting spouses. It's been amazing. I'm part of a group called Military Partner Family Coalition, MPFC. We started before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, and we've been helping each other kind of underground. And then once Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, we branched out and we've been doing more. So I've been on both sides, I guess you could say, the same-sex side as well as the straight side, and it's been great seeing the two sides merge together. But Washington State is very progressive in that respect as well.
Sure. They actually just legalized that recently, right? And this could be a landmark year for gay issues in the United States. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear 2 different cases at the same time, which I think surprised a lot of people. I think a lot of people thought they might hear one or the other. One is California's Prop 8, which bans same-sex marriages, and the second is DOMA, which we've talked about a lot in the show already. It's the federal act that says marriage can only be between a man and a woman. Can you tell us how this issue changes moving forward, whether the Supreme Court strikes down DOMA or part of DOMA, or if they don't, if they actually uphold DOMA, what happens?
Well, there are a number of potential outcomes of these two Supreme Court cases. It's going to be a fascinating sort of summer to see how it all falls out. Best case scenario, DOMA is struck down as unconstitutional. Prop 8 is addressed in a similar way, and families like these that we're talking to today, families who are making the same sacrifice that every other military family is making, all the barriers to them receiving these benefits fall. Now, at that point, how long does it take the Pentagon to come in line and provide them with the benefits that they deserve and that their service members have earned, many of them over a period of an entire career? Longer than any of us want, I expect.
Really?
But at that point, it's a foregone conclusion. Now, whether we reach that point, whether the best case scenario is what we get, is an open question. I'm not going to guess.
Well, what are people guessing? Because this is the most conservative Supreme Court the United States, I believe, has ever had. What do they think that they're going to do with this issue?
It is, and yet it's a Supreme Court that upheld Obamacare in a way, right? That I think was equally surprising for a lot of people.
Sure.
I'll be honest with you, as I kind of take the pulse of the community from where I sit, I'm a little bit concerned. I think people are putting a lot of hope in the Supreme Court to sort of wave their magic judicial wands and make everything better. Right. The fact of the matter is that that when equality has come to all of our communities, it's come because we fought for it. And people need to be prepared for that and not just kind of sitting back and hoping that the judicial system is going to take care of them.
I also wonder when people who aren't gay are going to stand up and start fighting for it as well. It seems to me any group who's oppressed, that no real change happens in this society until those who aren't oppressed stand up and say as well that they're not going to take it anymore. So I wonder when you see the parades in Washington with moms and strollers and straights saying it's a human rights issue. Yeah. I don't know if we see that momentum yet, for sure.
Speaking of a human rights issue, Josh, we got a tweet here from Maseka and a few people, since we have a global community, who are broadening this out, and they're saying, why sell or champion something abroad that people at home aren't buying? And of course, they're referring to comments like this from Secretary Clinton. Charlie and Karen, have a listen to this.
The Obama administration defends the human rights of LGBT people as part of our comprehensive human rights policy and as a priority of our foreign policy. In our embassies, our diplomats are raising concerns about specific cases and laws and working with a range of partners to strengthen human rights protections for all. In Washington...
So, Charlie, Karen, is there a double standard?
Well, I think that we're getting there. I think it's taking time. I think that there are people on both sides of the issue that recognize it as a human rights issue. The question is, how long will it take for policy to catch up?
Okay, all right, let's stop there because we just have a few seconds left. The show went way too fast. So we're going to pick up in the post show. Look, you've got to go to your computer now. Go to stream.aljazeera.com. I want to know how they feel about serving a very government that is treating them this way as well. So we have a lot more to talk about in the post show. And until Tuesday, we'll see you online. All right. Welcome back to the Streams Online Post Show. We're still discussing the challenges facing gay spouses in the U.S. military and why they're not provided the same benefits as heterosexual couples. With us are Allison Robinson, Charlie and Karen Morgan, Dan Lamont, and Scott Pearson. Okay, I cut you short on that answer, Charlie and Karen. So the U.S. seems to be telling the rest of the world that LGBT rights are human rights and there should be equality. But we don't seem to be practicing that here in the United States on these issues. And you were in the middle of commenting about that. I'd like to hear both of your thoughts on it.
Well, I want to point out, first of all, that our new governor, Maggie Hassan, in her address, spoke specifically about marriage equality and the importance of diversity of all types of people for our state. So I feel, especially with the leadership in this state of New Hampshire, that we are moving forward. I have a lot of respect for Secretary Clinton, and I believe that the State Department was doing everything that they could. So ultimately, we're just limited by the policies themselves. I do think we are moving forward. I don't see it as a double standard in a sense. I believe that our government does want to do the right thing, and I especially see it in New Hampshire.
Dan, Scott, you're serving the very organization that it has these discriminatory policies. How do you deal with the conflict there?
Well, the United States has always been a dynamic country, and we're always evolving and going through change. And I think that, it's the same as, as anybody that has gained rights throughout the history of the United States. I think that this is also the same type of situation, And, we're also fortunate in the state of Washington that we have a governor that also stood up for us and that they passed, marriage equality in the legislature, and she signed it into law. And, and our new governor, who is going to be sworn in tomorrow, also was a vocal advocate for marriage equality. And so I think that we're seeing the tide turn. We just had 3 states in this most recent election that passed marriage equality by the popular vote, as well as Minnesota that declined to add it, that to their constitution of marriage being one man and one woman. We're about to see Illinois and Rhode Island potentially add marriage equality as well. And so that will give us about 25% of the states that do in fact allow, anybody to marry. And so I think that that's, as we move, we're starting to see it branch out, and so I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but come on, look, you're talking about the states. I'm talking about the Pentagon leadership that are your bosses, and you serve them. Isn't there some part of you that is frustrated with them not standing up for you the same way they would a heterosexual soldier?
Absolutely.
Change is always frustrating. I will say that, but I love the United States, and I've served the United States in the military for 19 years, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I hope, that change comes about sooner rather than later. I believe it will. I believe with us, re-electing the president that we have, and maintaining many of the things that we have, I believe that we're headed in the right direction than had we, perhaps gone a different direction.
Charlie, Karen, I know you wanted to jump in on this topic. Do you feel frustrated that the leadership that you're serving perhaps isn't serving you as loyally?
Personally, I'm just frustrated that it's taken a long time, but as he stated, we are military, and we are loyal to our military, and we love our country. And
then why aren't they as loyal to you?
Excuse me?
Then why aren't they as loyal to you?
Well, I don't see it that way. I don't see that. I think they're doing, what the policy states. We are Americans. We fight for equality. We take care of each other. I see that as the most important issue. Is it frustrating that Karen can't get TRICARE? Yes, but I don't specifically blame the leadership at all. Just the policy itself.
How do you not question the leadership that puts the policy in place?
Well, honestly,
if I might say,
yeah, go for it.
I don't like half the stuff the leadership does at times when I was in, but you do what you're told as a member of the military. And not everything is going to be equitable. But you do what you're told, you follow orders. But first and foremost, amongst any of us, any member of the military, you are a soldier, a sailor, a Marine, an airman first and foremost. Not every policy is going to be equitable, gay or straight. You do what you're told, you follow orders. And our straight counterparts, when you go do stuff, it's not fair sometimes, but
yeah, but the level of not fair is different here. I know that you represent some clients where the spouse has health issues. They live in San Diego, and because they can't afford health care, that he has to drive to Mexico to get his drugs.
That's right.
And it wouldn't be the case if the Pentagon changed this policy.
That's right.
So how do you see soldiers dealing with this conflict, that the leadership that they're loyal to seems to be less than loyal to them on this issue?
Right. Well, as a former soldier myself, I attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. I was an air defense artillery officer and served all over the world. I'm also the child of an Army sergeant, the granddaughter of an Army sergeant. It's in my blood. I get what these service members are saying, and I respect them for saying it. Those are the values that lead them to this place where they're laying their lives on the line every day for a government that has said, if something happens to you, don't expect us to take care of your families. There's something incredibly noble in what they're doing. Today, my organization gets to be the one who sits here in Washington, who drives over to the Pentagon, who goes to the White House and to the halls of Congress and says, this is a travesty. The way that we are treating these service members, we know better than this. America expects better. We expect that when people make equal sacrifices, they will receive equal honor.
Wow. All right, we've got to end it on that one, on that note. So in the meantime, though, let's go over to Malika for some other leads we're following.
The influential U.S. gun lobby has released a new iPhone shooting game marketed for ages 4 and up. The game features gun safety tips for players, but also shooting targets and the option to unlock a sniper rifle for less than $1. Well, the release comes weeks after the National Rifle Association, whose executive vice president is seen here, criticized the video game industry for gun violence in the U.S. You can check out the app and reaction to it on our website at stream.aljazeera.com. Our next lead's taking place across the web, where netizens are paying tribute to online activist Aaron Swartz, who committed suicide last week. Swartz had faced federal charges for allegedly hacking into academic journal archives at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Federal prosecutors have now dismissed the charges against the open source advocate, but not before Anonymous pledged to take on the U.S. Department of Justice.
Second phase of this operation will begin after Aaron is laid to rest. Partnering with other organizations, Anonymous intends to pursue reform within the DOJ and other government agencies to prevent the kind of unnecessary harassment that Aaron Swartz was victim to. Some of the brightest...
Well, MIT has pledged an internal investigation of their role in the suicide, but that didn't stop Anonymous from hacking MIT's website, posting this memoriam for Swartz along with the call for reform of computer crime laws. As a tribute, academics are uploading PDFs of their copyrighted articles from mass sharing online, a suggestion that came from Reddit user Micah Allen. And acquaintances of Swartz took the call to Twitter using the hashtag PDFtribute. It's received more than 35,000 mentions since Friday, and articles associated with the tribute are being archived at pdftribute.net. Well, for more on this story, check out Inside Story Americas, who will be covering it in depth on Monday's show at 0030 GMT. And as always, let us know what you think by tweeting us with the hashtag AJStream. Josh?
It just breaks my heart. 26 years old, whatever you're facing at 26 years old isn't bad enough to take your life. You'll look back on those problems and not even remember them as problems half the time.
Right.
And that kid had so much potential, and he had already done so much for being that young, right?
And yet those problems were more than life size.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks, Malika. Let's continue this conversation today. As a matter of fact, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Josh Rushing, or you can use the hashtag AJStream. I'll join in the conversation, of course. And then tomorrow, we're looking at, did a grandmother spark up the current flare-up between India and Pakistan? Tune in to learn more as we examine whether the two countries can ever have lasting peace without actually solving the problem of Kashmir. Until then, we'll see you online.